It is 6:13 right now on your Wednesday morning. Former President Donald Trump is on his way to making history, becoming just the second person in U.S. history to win 2 non-consecutive terms as commander-in-chief.
Joining us live this morning from the Scripps News headquarters in Atlanta is our deputy political director, Joe St. George. Joe, I know it was a late night for you, or I watched you on TV a bit last night with the big board there. Let's start with how that all came together, how former President Trump was able to claim this victory, really outperforming himself in past elections. Let's break it down.
I think it's a simple story. He simply overperformed where he was in 2020, overperformed in many suburbs, overperformed in many urban corridors. The rural parts of America came out in force for him. And Harris, all of that talk, all of those vibes, all of that energy that we saw in many of the rallies that she did in Wisconsin and around the country, it just wasn't replicated in the numbers, quite frankly, to match the volume of some of those rallies. I mean, look, we started the night with 7 core battleground states. We talked about those 7 states ad nauseum over the course of the last 6 months or so. Harris is on track right now to win none of them. We haven't called Michigan or Arizona, but Trump is leading there today. There is going to be a lot of finger pointing and soul searching at the Democratic Party as a direct result of what happened last night. As far as Donald Trump, it is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, American political comebacks. Think about it. Someone who's been indicted 4 times, been convicted in New York City of felonies, someone who was seemingly at the bottom of their political career on January 6th, January 7th, with Republicans renouncing him en masse. Not only was he able to unite the Republican Party here in 2024, he was able to do something he didn't do in 2016, and that is win the popular vote. It looks like that will ultimately be the case.
Yeah, what we have seen in the Republican Party and also the Democratic Party has been anything but normal this election season. Joe, let's jump ahead just a little bit here. What are some of the biggest questions now surrounding a second Trump administration?
I'm glad you asked that, Simone, because I think our folks at home, I think they care less about the politics and where the vote was churned out at this point and wonder, well, how does this impact your life? For one, I'm thinking about border and immigration policies. As Mr. Trump has told our Scripps News reporters that he would be open to things like military to the border. He has said that mass deportation policies could be on the table. What does that look like in communities in Wisconsin and around the country if it is enacted? I'm keeping a close eye on the House of Representatives. We know he's going to win the Senate, have control of the Senate. There'll be an ally there. But are Democrats able to flip the House some way over the course of the next several days? If they are, that would be a serious check on what Trump could do for the next at least 2 years. If the Republican Party holds the House, it would be a trifecta, and Trump could easily move things through Congress, or at least more easily than they would with a Democratic House. I'm also thinking of Elon Musk, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. What role will they play in a Trump 2.0 administration? Musk, for instance, has talked about shrinking the size of the federal government. And we didn't even talk about foreign policy. What does this mean for the Ukraine-Russian war? Mr. Trump has been more critical of giving Ukraine assistance and has been calling for more peace. So there's international and domestic implications for what happened last night.
Yeah, he said last night when he spoke, promises made, promises kept. We're going to go through and keep the promises that we made on the campaign trail. Lastly here, Joe, let's talk about what's next for the Democratic Party.
Yeah. Well, as I said, they've got to look at this map and ask themselves what went wrong. Mm-hmm. What did the Biden-Harris administration do over the course of the last 4 years that was soundly rejected by swing state voters? Again, that is a big question. This is certainly obviously a hit on the Biden legacy. It's obviously a hit on the Harris legacy as well. There will be finger pointing at Joe Biden, saying that the president should have stepped out of the race earlier and there should have been a more robust primary, that he got out too late. Others will say that he maybe should have stayed in the race because he actually beat Trump 4 years ago. I do think, though, you don't have to get crazy philosophical to understand a few things. One, really tough for current sitting vice presidents to be elected anytime, but especially when the current president has poor approval ratings. When Bush 1 was elected as the sitting vice president under Reagan in 1988, Reagan had a 50% approval rating. Joe Biden's underwater by 16, 18 percentage points. And what is the one issue, Tom and Simone, that we heard so much from viewers and voters in Milwaukee and Wisconsin time and time again? Inflation, the cost of things. It's really tough tough to be elected when inflation is a defining part of your administration.
Yeah, the economy. We'll see where we can go now. It's so different seeing Joe in front of the board on our morning show. Good to see you, Joe. Hopefully you can get some rest.
Good to see you guys. Me too. I'll be sleeping in a couple hours.
Okay, sounds good, Joe.